53% of the U.S. population believes that the universe is 6,000 years old and that we have no genetic precursors in the natural world apart from Adam and Eve. There was a study done in 34 countries assessing the level of belief in evolution, and the U.S. came in 33rd, just before Turkey. This is embarrassing. But when you add to this comedy of false certainties the fact that 44% of Americans claim to be confident that Jesus is going to return to Earth in their lifetime, you see a terrible liability of this kind of thinking, because when you look at the prophecies that describe these end-of-times events, you see that it's not an exaggeration to say that something like half of the American population is eagerly anticipating the end of the world. I think it should be rather obvious that this kind of thinking provides people with no basis to make the hard decisions we have to make, to create a durable civilization for ourselves, to make geopolitical and environmental and economic policy that has a time horizon of not 50 years, but thousands of years. Now, many of these people are lunatics, of course, but they are not the lunatic fringe. I mean, we're talking about Christian ministers who have congregations numbering in the tens of thousands. We're talking about organizations that have operating budgets in the tens of millions of dollars a year, and in some cases, hundreds of millions of dollars a year, whose primary purpose is to spread this ghoulish expectation that the world is soon going to end in glory. We're talking about a group like the Christians United for Israel, which is lobbying the White House and Congress at this moment to take a very hard line with Iran for biblical reasons. Now, it may be that we want to take a very hard line with Iran, but it seems to me rather obvious that we don't want our religious maniacs pushing us there.
I say in my book, available at fine bookstores everywhere, that as long as I don't have to hear about it, I don't mind what people believe. If they say, well, thanks to Joseph Smith and his gold plates, I have real faith now, and I've got a family, and I have friends, and I have a real system, and so on. I say, fine. Just don't come to my front door with it. Don't ask for a tax break for it. Don't ask my children to be taught it in the schools.
Did you sign up tonight thinking...
You notice how often that religion, rather than answer the questions that I've put, like, how do you know there's a God? What evidence do you have for it? Which you say, well, lots of good people do good things because they're religious. Well, let's take the most recent pressing case. Richard Dawkins and I and a few others, in the response to the Haiti earthquake, set up an emergency charity for people of non-belief to give to, because so many charitable organizations are, in fact, proselytizing groups. So we raised about $2 million in a weekend. And all that money goes straight. By the way, thank you. If you go to Richard's website, you can find out more about how to donate to this, because it's permanent. It's going to stay in being. All that money went straight to Doctors Without Borders, of course, and the International Red Cross, which, though it has a cross, isn't a religious organization. Both these organizations are already in Haiti. They're proven. None of the money goes to support any missionary activity. None. And the Scientologists and all the others who turned up in Haiti, and the people who turned up in Haiti to kidnap babies to convert them to their faith, and the Catholics who turned up and said, standing in the ruins of their own cathedral, with 250,000 Haitians buried under the rubble, said, God spoke here today, and you should listen to his message. Don't tell me that's good. Don't tell me that's good. That's wicked. It's proselytizing. It's proselytizing with the helpless, using them as objects of charity and conversion. It's lying to people.
But there's also a lot of...
It's wrong to lie. It's wrong to lie to people. And it's giving them false hopes and false explanations for their plight.
I think it's a false fear, the idea that we wouldn't find any reason to build beautiful architecture or paint nice paintings, but for indulging certain religious superstitions. It's just not. I think Feynman once wrote that he was a poor poet who must fall silent when he finds out that the sun is actually a massive sphere of hydrogen fusing into helium. I mean, it's not. The claim is that you have to take something on faith to be creative, and I think it's a product of an argument that you used briefly early on, which is a fallacious one. This idea that the percentages of people who do these great, I think you used it in the
In
connection
terms of
to-
goodness, not in terms of what?
Yeah, in
Right,
terms of
right,
goodness.
right.
Most people...
Was it not fallacious in
Yeah.
goodness? I'm just
well, yeah,
curious.
no, it's
that one
fallacious.
too, okay.
Most people are doing this good work are doing it for religious reasons. Well, most people, most of the time, have been religious throughout human history. There has been no one else to do the job. This is true.
Yeah.
I mean, most people who have plucked chickens have plucked them while believing in God. That does not mean you need to believe in God to pluck a chicken.
That is precisely why.
Is there a God, a creator, a prime mover, an uncaused cause, whatever you like to call it? And this was the question answered at a certain point, not very long ago in our history, by the deists, people like Thomas Jefferson, Thomas Paine, and many others, who said that the order of the universe seemed to suggest that it couldn't just have been random, that there may have been a designer, but the designer didn't take any part in human affairs. And that, in the late 17th, early 18th centuries, was probably, late 18th, early 19th centuries, was probably a very intelligent position to hold. It was as far, pre-Einstein, pre-Darwin, was probably as far as you were likely to get with philosophical speculation. But so believing that there might be a cause or a mover or a creator is one thing, but believing that there is a supervising, intervening entity who cares who wins the war, who cares who you sleep with and in what way, who cares what you eat and on what day, and in other words, who makes you the center of the whole cosmos, is another thing altogether. As the great physicist Laplace said when he demonstrated his working model, his orrery, as it's called, of the solar system to the emperor, and Napoleon said, well, I see there's no God in this system, and Laplace said, well, Your Majesty, it works without that assumption.
It does not prove that simply because you have to look at what else these people believed. There is a values vacuum in religion. There's a values vacuum in an organization like the Catholic Church that preaches the sinfulness of condom use in sub-Saharan Africa.
Yes, I agree with you.
Okay, there's a values vacuum in that
Right.
same institution that shelters its pedophile priests.
Yeah.
Literally an army of child rapists,
Yes.
based on its own intent upon maintaining its integrity as a religious institution. There's a values vacuum in, and I could go on. And it's not like
Right.
religion is this perfect advertisement for the kinds of values you get once you believe that your book was
Nope, it
dictated
is,
by the
it
creator of
is
the
an
universe.
imperfect.
Jesus lays on that hippie stuff pretty thick. He has lines like, do not repay evil with evil, and do not take revenge on someone who wrongs you. Really. It's in that book you hold up when you scream at gay people. And not to put too fine a point on it, but nonviolence was kind of Jesus' trademark. Kind of his big thing. To not follow that part of it is like joining Greenpeace and hating whales. There's interpreting, and then there's just ignoring. It's just ignoring if you're for torture, as are more evangelical Christians than any other religion. You're supposed to look at that figure of Christ on the cross and think, how could a man suffer like that and forgive? Not, Romans are pussy, he still has his eyes. Like, apparently, our president, who says he gets scripture on his BlackBerry first thing every morning, but who said on 60 Minutes that anyone who would question that bin Laden deserved assassination should, quote, have their head examined. Hey, Fox News, you missed a big headline. Obama thinks Jesus is nuts. To which I say hallelujah, because my favorite new government program is surprising violent religious zealots in the middle of the night and shooting them in the face. But you see, I can say that because I'm a non-Christian, just like most Christians. And Christians, I know, I'm sorry, I know you hate this and you want to square this circle, but you can't. I'm not even judging you. I'm just saying logically, if you ignore every single thing Jesus commanded you to do, you're not a Christian. You're just auditing. You're not Christ's followers. You're just fans. And if you believe the earth was given to you to kick ass on while gloating, you're not really a Christian. You're a Texan.
Now, there are many well-intentioned people in our society who feel an impulse to apologize for all of this, who think that all of the bloodletting we're witnessing in the Muslim world is a result of the militarism and the incompetence and the greed of our own government. Now, I'm convinced this is a profoundly dangerous misunderstanding of our situation for reasons that I spell out at some length in my first book, The End of Faith. And I'm convinced it's a misunderstanding even if we admit that our war in Iraq has been a catastrophic mistake, as I think it has been. I mean, there's no question we have made enemies in Iraq. But there are enemies there that we have not made, or not merely made. And the enemies we have made, for the most part, we have made by virtue of their theology, by virtue of what they believe about the ascendancy of their faith and the one true way to live on this earth. So this is the situation I think we're in. I think faith is playing both sides of the board in an increasingly dangerous game. And the greatest problem with the rest of us, with secularists and religious moderates and scientists, is that we find it very difficult to believe that people actually believe this stuff. Secularists and religious moderates, almost by definition, don't know what it's like to be certain of God, to be certain of paradise, to be certain that the book they keep by their bed is the perfect word of the creator of the universe. And therefore they tend to discount the utterances of people who really are certain as propaganda, as behavior that's really a cover for behavior that's being motivated by economics and politics. I mean, I don't know how many more engineers and architects need to fly planes into our buildings before we realize that this is not merely a matter of lack of education or economic despair.
I have to say, to me, it doesn't seem a matter of religion that I can choose to pick up this class. That seems to me to be well within what could develop purely scientific basis.
How?
I'm not a scientist, but it doesn't seem like a mystery of God to me personally.
Oh, sure it is. Well, no, but seriously, where does the element of free choice come from?
I could be purely instinctual and put my head in a stream and drink and choose to do that.
But
And
wait,
I can do it now.
when you say choose, when you say choose, where does the choice come from any more than the choice of this glass to fall down? Where do you get a choice as opposed to a complex interaction of DNA and environment, neither of which you chose?
Again, piling on completely unnecessary assumptions. It's also inviting a question that will make you uncomfortable.
Go ahead.
If you say that no, it's because God has given you free will, I have to ask you, how do you know that?
Well, are you assuming that we have free will? Are you assuming
sure.
that we have free will?
If you answer,
Then give me another source.
If you answer my question with another
Give
question,
me another
I'll still
source.
answer it.
Okay.
I will still answer it, even
Thank you.
though your question is an answer to mine. Rather, not an answer, a response to mine.
Yeah.
The view I take about free will is that, of course, we have free will because we have no choice but to have it. But to say, of course we have free will, the boss says we've got it, is to make a mockery of the whole concept. And it's also to invite the question, what kind of tyranny is this that you want? You want an all-supervising, all-deciding person. I ask you first, what sources of information do you have about this person's existence that I don't have, that are denied to me? I'd like to know. And second, why do you want it? Why do you want to arrive at a terminus of unfreedom where there is a celestial authority upon whom all things depend and from which all things flow? Why do you want that, and how on earth do you know that there's any case to be made for its existence?
Yes, please. That's a
Oh,
great question.
I don't think that's a terminus of unfreedom.
I think you're
actually
only free when you've declared against it, frankly. That's the beginning of freedom, is the emancipation from
that decoded to the
the tyranny of theocracy, yes.
In fact, ridiculing ideas is what makes progress. So if I offend some of you, I don't mean to offend you personally. I may offend some of your ideas, but that doesn't bother me at all. In fact, if you confront my ideas, it will lead to a discussion. Here's an idea of why common sense should tell you that Islam, like many other religions, is not common sense. Because, of course, homosexuality is perfectly natural. In all animal species, almost, it's natural. It occurs with a 10% frequency. Okay? In fact, there are good evolutionary reasons for homosexuality. So in that sense, there's no reason and a fundamental... Why would a God who thought it was a sin make it natural among all species? I don't think the sheep, by the way, which 10% of sheep are long-term homosexual relationships. Okay? Why would a God who thought it was a sin create sheep who aren't able to think about it be homosexual? That's the kind of nonsense that we have to ask, and the only way we can determine if it's nonsense is by looking at the world around us, not by deducing it, not by listening to the words of ignorant individuals and Iron Age peasants who didn't even know the Earth orbited the sun. Wisdom and learning comes from observing the world around us, and we shouldn't take our wisdom from people who didn't even understand the way the world worked. My intent, and I'm sure I've offended people here, my intent was not to offend. I always offend, and I offend some of my scientific colleagues too. My intent was just to raise questions and encourage people to think about issues. And for that, I hope that some of the statements I've made will cause people to think. And indeed, my whole point is that given access to information, and I believe you should get access to information about the world really works, which is why I write scientific books and I speak, because I think these are some of those beautiful ideas people have ever come up with, that we shouldn't be afraid of them. We shouldn't fear them. We shouldn't view them as if, in fact, if they offend our beliefs, that's a good thing, because it means our beliefs are wrong. And that, as I say to students all the time, is the greatest gift we can have. Changing our minds and learning is what's produced the progress that allows this room to happen, that allows these video cameras to be recording things. So I just hope that as I hope I am willing to change my beliefs or change my mind in the presence of evidence and get information, that I hope that some of the things I've said has spurred your thinking, and I certainly don't want to convert you into anything. And so thank you for listening.
Are you a Christian?
I'm not.
What are
I'm
you?
not a member of any church. I don't think that there's any supernatural guidance. And
Here's the article, by the way, in
I
the
don't think my
Washington
presence here is attributable to any form of divine intervention.
What did you make of the story?
I thought it was a sad little story.
Why?
Well, someone who's getting a bit old and a bit silly and perhaps lacking for attention, and who I would have thought it would have been content with being born once, which is all that, in fact, she's ever going to be. Or any of us are. We're only going to be born once. So all this born-again stuff just gets me down, gives me a pain.
Says in this article, I'm extremely impressed with the genuineness and the sincerity in her search for spirituality and wholeness. The Reverend Gerald Durley, pastor of the Providence Missionary Baptist Church in Atlanta, where Miss Fonda has attended services, told the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, I think she's found a certain sense of peace among people who found peace with Christianity.
So hard to object to, isn't it? You know what I think what I don't like, well, there's a lot of it I don't like, as well as finding it totally intellectually and morally unconvincing, is that this is the form that they believe modesty should take. It's going around all the time about how you've found God and how God has a special purpose for you. This is construed as humility. It seems to me the height of immodesty to say that you've been chosen in this way or selected, or that you could possibly know that you had been. It's arrogant and conceited.